Absolutely. A lot of questions here. Let's bring in our News 5 political analyst, Quin Hillier, for a little more perspective on this very controversial new law. Quin, first and foremost, which court will this battle be fought out in?
Well, it's going to get sent back to the lower courts first. And because the Supreme Court didn't give the lower courts any guidance on the underlying issue, they just said that it had reached the Supreme Court too early. So they sent it back to the lower courts. It leaves the lower courts pretty free, again, to determine on their own what the applicable laws are. Now, whatever they rule, it is almost certain to be reappealed back up to the Supreme Court, and the whole process could take many months.
You want to predict an outcome here on all of this?
Well, yeah. Right on this newscast last week, I noted that Alabama state law gives the legislature wide latitude to interpret and apply its own legislative rules. And as a matter of fact, the one thing in what the Supreme Court just did was Chief Justice Moore issued a special concurrence where he said just exactly that the legislature can interpret its own rules and apply them, and that's going to make it very difficult for a challenge to this law to stand. So I think in the end, some version of what the Chief Justice said is going to happen, and the law will indeed go into effect.
There are some people who don't like the law. There are others who don't like the way the law was passed. How much backlash are Republicans getting for allegedly producing this bill behind closed doors?
Well, they're definitely getting a lot of short-term backlash. I mean, that's obvious, but I don't think they really care about the backlash they get from Democrats in the legislature. What they're going to be worried about is whether they have a long-term backlash from the public. And, you know, a lot of reformers, school reformers, think this will actually do a lot of good for Alabama children. The only way that Republicans are going to avoid this backlash is if they do a good enough job explaining why it will do a lot of good for Alabama children. And that, of course, will remain to be seen in terms of the political, long-term political effects of this.
All right. Thanks so much, Quin Hillier. We'll see you next week.
Peter.